BS-Free Witchcraft is a production of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Nerd and Tie produces podcasts ranging from actual play to true crime, and you can find more at nerdandtie.com or join our Discord by going to nerdandtie.com/Discord. Welcome to BS-Free Witchcraft, your monthly guide to the modern witchcraft movement, minus a lot of the usual, well, bullshit. I'm your host, Trey Dorn, and it is December of 2021, and I have thrown out everything I had put together for this episode. Holy cow. I had a whole different episode planned for this month that I'd literally, scheduled months ago. I'd done all of this research. I had done so much work. I had the outlines ready to go. I had all the sources and resources and everything, and I was going to sit down and record. And then I was like, holy crap, this is really way too depressing. It's especially when you look at what we did in November, because in November we talked about predators, abusers, and cults. It was a very content warning on that episode for, a lot of bad stuff. And then I was going to go into this episode, and then it was not good. It was not good. So, I really didn't think that one through, because I know that a lot of you listen to the show. Most of you listen month to month with me. There are people who binge this show where they'll save it up for 3 or 4 months at a time and then listen to a bunch in a row. And I couldn't talk about the original subject I had planned right after that, because it was a subject that originally started from a light and fun place and then went really down a rabbit hole I didn't expect. And we're gonna still talk about that, not this month. I don't want to say what it is, because even that will bring you down. But we will talk about it. I don't know if in January or February, depending on my planning, because again, I have all the research and notes done for it. But we're going to talk about something else instead. Just based on what I could literally based on what episode I could throw together, within an hour, because this episode has to get recorded today, so I can finish editing it in time to put it out for the Patreon patrons. The topic we're talking about is the winter holidays. We're going to talk about Yule. We're going to talk about Christmas. We're going to talk about the winter solstice, all that stuff, because, when this episode comes out for Patreon patrons, the solstice is in a couple of days. When it comes out to regular listeners, the solstice was a few days ago, because I think literally this month it's coming out on December 25th. Technically midnight December 25th. So Christmas Eve / Christmas is when this episode comes out, depending on where in the world you are. So, yeah. Well, and also, frankly, most of the listeners of this show are the vast majority are in the United States, and the ones who aren't are largely in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. I know I have listeners other places, but that is literally over 90% of my statistics for this show. So I know that most of the people listening to this show are in an area where Christianity is the dominant culture, and we've all grown up, if not celebrating Christmas ourselves, surrounded by people who do. It's just sort of embedded in the fabric of the year. We've all been inundated with that Hershey Kiss commercial, and all of the accoutrements that come with. I'm sure someone's mentioned the Wham song that we're all avoiding as a challenge, and maybe one of your friends dug up the Folgers incest commercial. Who knows? Tis the season. I don't know. We've gone down a weird path already. Anyways, one of the things about being a witch and growing up in a Christian world is that the one thing that a lot of witchcraft spaces see a lot are people complaining about how the Christians, quote unquote, stole Christmas and stole a lot of their Christmas traditions from us. And, y'all, we need to put some of those myths to bed. Right? We need to put some of the memes and myths that we see in witchcraft and neo-pagan spaces to bed about the Christians, quote unquote, stealing Christmas from other people. Because, look, I'm not saying everything. Like, I'm not saying that Christianity didn't, like, take on some things from other local traditions. Like, obviously, like, the Yule log, for example, because the word Yule itself comes from, like, calling it Yuletide comes from taking a name from something else. But we're going to talk about why whining about it is dumb. Like, the first thing I always like, and I've been guilty of this stuff myself when I was younger, before I really dug into it, because again, there are a lot of myths put out in the modern witchcraft movement, many myths, and we've always worked to debunk them, right? Like the myths of Wicca's origin, we debunked that, but there were a lot of other lies that came out that were left unchallenged at the same time. Like, first and foremost, like, you'll always hear like people talking about like Saturnalia, or like the birth of the god Mithra, like a sun god, like things like that, and like, oh, and that all happened to be right around, like, the birth of sun gods right around December 25th, because, the solstice. And guys, I'm going to tell you something. Christmas being in late December has literally nothing directly to do with the winter solstice. It really doesn't. See, while historians do mostly agree that Christ was not born in December, like, not, I should say Christ, Jesus. Growing up culturally Christian has ruined my ability to talk. I wasn't even raised by Christians, and I'm like, so the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, who Christians, like, assuming he was a real person, which he likely there was a guy like named Josh who existed, right? Everything else after that, details get fuzzy, but there was a human being who existed that they built this around, most likely. Anyways, the early Christian church, it's like, this is the re-recording. Like, I got so tangented and off the first time I tried to record this. This is me going back to re-record this to like be more organized in my thoughts, and I've already just like crashed the bus into the levee. Wow. Anyways, the reason why Christmas is in late December is because in the early Christian church, and I'm talking like first, second century stuff, when the like first century especially, like when the effects of the people leaving Judaism for this new religion were still pretty like strong. Like, there was strong connection to Judaism still back then, first century stuff. Before the Christianity as a movement became what it later became. It was the generally accepted idea that the Immaculate Conception happened at Passover, right? And Passover is in the spring. So the early Christians did some math. They added 9 months. Like, we've known largely how long pregnancy takes for a very long time. And so they just did some basic math. And by adding 9 months to Passover, or at least when they were observing it at the time, they came up with late December. That is literally the whole reason why Christmas is in late December. It's just, and everybody like tries to like, there's this conspiratorial attitude that like a lot of us have, because like there's this strong desire to feel like that those of us who are outsiders to Christianity directly, right? Like those of us who, like, I'm a Wiccan, like a lot of people in neo-pagan spaces and all this stuff. And like also though, like and this falls in a lot with the atheists too, where there's this need to feel like the Christian church has taken things from us that were rightfully ours, and there's a desire for that, right? Like there's a desire to feel vindicated against the majority, because it's just human nature. But sometimes stuff just happens to fall at the same time of year, right? Like people they call all these conspiracies having to do with like sun gods and things like that, and just forget that like why, because Christianity has diverged so far from Judaism that they forget that when something has diverged, there was a starting point where things were close to each other. Right? Now, obviously, that's not to say that like nothing about the modern Christmas doesn't take from solstice celebrations. Like obviously, looking at the name Yule in general, Yule was a Germanic and Scandinavian holiday. You know, it's still the name for that time of year, and in a lot of Scandinavian countries, it's so like when we talk about like there are things like, you know, but that has more to do with the coincidence of the matter. Like people like, I think Bede tried to connect things directly to like Christmas Eve and things like that. But there's little historical stuff. Like it's Yule itself probably often did overlap with Christmas. Yule historically, like it's hard to get the exact date that Yule was celebrated. But just because we believe it to be about the solstice, just because, you know, between like Snorri and Bede, like there's conflicting stuff, and all of it was written, you know, long after these pagan practices were no longer being practiced. Some sources say that the traditional Germanic Yule lasted like 3 days. Some say 12, although there's a thing to be believed that the 12 is a later people trying to Christianize the holiday. I think it's in Snorri. No, I don't know. Ocean Keltoy has a great video about this, and I'll link to him. And, you know, instead of me trying to half recall a source from a long time ago, I'll recall the video I watched earlier this week and link to him, and because he's pretty well sourced his stuff. Where that Yule lasted until the ale ran out. It's he also makes an interesting statement about stuff with the Yule log, because I have seen this in like memes, and literally I watched someone else's video where they tried to claim that the Yule log burned for 12 days, and that's where like the 12 days of Christmas come from. A couple of things with that. The 12 days of nativity is pretty early on established in the Christian church, long before Christianity ever reached like the Germanic regions or Scandinavia or anything like that. Second, like that's got to be some magic wood burning for 12 days. Lots of stuff. Yeah, Ocean Keltoy debunks that one pretty hard, and so I'm gonna just redirect you to him on that. But like people just like pass on these legends, and it's funny because like in many ways we talk about like the Christians stealing from Yule, but if anything, like Wiccans are far more guilty of co-opting Yule. Like I saw someone ask one, like I saw an ask on Tumblr of someone who asked like, what are traditional like Celtic things for Yule? And I'm like, Yule isn't Celtic. Because it's the Germanic. Yeah, Yule itself is like not a single day, by the way. Like that's the whole thing. Is like I think that like Wicca especially has kind of linked what was a multi-day festival historically. Has like people talk about it as like a single day, and they just talk about it on the solstice. And I really blame I blame Gardner Nichols for putting together the Wheel of the Year. And because later Wiccans then attached the name Yule to the 21st because it was a convenient name, Yule's not a single day. Like, I think in modern, like, it's a whole range. Now, the historical Yule, of course, centered around Odin and the Wild Hunt. Odin is very much linked into to Yule. It's all about Odin. But, and it's obviously things about, people could argue that stuff about imagery about Odin has been linked into St. Nicholas and Santa Claus, and they all been conflated. But that doesn't mean, like, that's just cultural evolution. That's not a conspiracy. If anything, like, yeah, it's like, but people don't care. People just want to build their conspiracy theory, and they don't want to fact check. Like, let's talk about the Christmas tree. Right? The Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is not a stolen pagan tradition. It just isn't, guys. Because the Christmas tree dates back to the 16th century. Now, obviously, there's some stuff predating it, but like the real, like in Czechoslovakia, I think there's like the Czech Republic and Slovakia, like there's stuff that like links in to it before this, but mostly the Christmas tree originated with Protestant Christians in Germany in the 16th century. And I've seen people try to like connect this to evergreens in Rome with like Saturnalia, but like the idea of bringing in a full tree really comes from and decorating it is Germany in the 16th century. It's like, I think the story might be apocryphal, but it's like, I think Martin Luther is supposed to be the first one who like put lights on the tree, like put candles in the tree for Christmas. This is because like, and I've seen people like cite this thing and talk about it like, that Christmas tree that like the pre-Christian heathens saw trees as sacred, which is not untrue, but it's not directly linked to any specific holiday. It's not part of any of like, whether you look at Bede or Snorri, like any of the historic depictions and like conversations about Yule don't talk about it existing in those countries. And so we know it was invented. The Christmas tree was really a 16th century thing. Because also it was like oaks would be more sacred than evergreens, but whatever. It is, frankly, the Christmas tree has always been a Christian thing, but you will see reputable people talk about it as though it's this stolen pagan tradition. And I'm guilty of this too. Again, like all of this stuff, there is a point in my practice where I was guilty of all of this. So, in the end, let's just let's just relax, guys. When you're gonna I know it's just me harping all the time about like, do research before passing on a meme. Do research before passing on a meme. Do research before passing on a meme. And don't trust every stupid witch you've met on the internet, including me. Fact check all of us. Wow, guys. Wow. Because like, chances are, if you find some meme talking about how the Christians stole our holiday from us, that you don't have any more claim to whatever you think they stole than they do. And in some cases, maybe you have less of one. That's my hot take. So, wow, I spent a lot of time on that. That's going to probably be the bulk of the episode. But let's talk about what I actually celebrate around this time of the year. I'll admit that I don't actually often do things on the actual solstice because I see my family, like my actual family, at Christmas, and we have a fairly most of my direct family is not Christian at all. I have Christians in my extended family, but we have a culturally Christian Christmas, I guess I would say, because obviously, like, we're celebrating, we got the tree, we're doing our gift giving. There's not really a mention of Jesus Christ anywhere because no one in my family, my direct family, really believes in him. But to claim that what we're doing is divorced from any form of Christianity would be an exercise in egotism. But it's I see the holidays as a time to gather in the dark and to spend time with the ones we love, and that's what I do. And whether you choose to do that on the actual solstice or whether you choose to do that on Christmas, frankly, in my life, it's easier for us to do it on Christmas because we all have the day off of work. All of us do. So it's like, because even if I got off, the fact is that, like, no one else in my family really celebrates on the solstice at all. So, I wouldn't get to see them then. Now, things become interesting with families and whether or not we admit that we're a witch to them. This podcast has been a great way to tell people, apparently. I've been, like, open with being a witch for decades. However, it just doesn't come up in conversation with a lot of my relatives. So, it's like, it's not that, like, it's not something I hide, but I also have a generally accepting family, It's never been a point of contention. There are people who can't be open with their family or where it's an issue, and that sucks. Just like any situation where your family is judging you for being a person who exists. So, this is my thought. It's, if your family doesn't accept you for who you are, be it because of your faith, be it because of who you love, be it because of your identity, you are not obligated to spend your time with anyone who makes you feel judged, who makes you feel bad about yourself. And if you don't have people you can spend time with comfortably, that doesn't mean you're obligated to spend time with the ones who make you uncomfortable. And again, and secondly, if, as I always say, if you're in a situation where it's unsafe for you to be open about it, don't be open about it. But I guess, what would my ideal Yule celebration be? Like, my ideal solstice celebration, I should say. You see, I don't feel bad about celebrating the 25th because, we stole from Yule, and, Yule, it goes from, like, the solstice till the end of the year, as far as I'm concerned. So, I know that Yule itself, that, like, the wheel of the year time I'm supposed to do it is on the actual solstice, but the holiday we stole from is still good. Stole the name Yule from is still going by the 25th. So as long as the ale hasn't run out, we're fine. Or in my family, the Gleg. We always have to light the Gleg. We are my family has so even though I'm largely German, familially, I'm still a quarter Swedish, and on my mom's side of the family, the Larson sisters were the historic, and we're going literally like 3 generations back from me, and I'm middle aged, so I'm not even the latest generation of the family. They were kind of like the cement that kind of like built most of our family traditions. So there's a lot of Swedish stuff in my family, and the Gleg is, of course, it's going to be made. And of course, there's the annual lighting of the Gleg. I think my cousin Daniel burned off all of his arm hairs once. Yeah, it's stuff you gotta do, man. I don't know. I feel like this episode sure did happen. I hope that this was an acceptable, like, installment of this show for you guys. I'm so sorry. I needed to do something light. Because it gets dark early. Like, isn't that the whole point of the season? Is that the nights are so long right now that, like, when I finish work today, after, because I record this and I'm going to go to work. And so when I finish work today, it's dark out now and it's going to be dark when I'm done. And it's just the worst. Like, my daylight hours are going to be wasted staring at a computer screen, looking at spreadsheets, and I'm just... We want to light up the night, and so I just couldn't, in good, like, for my own sanity, talk about some of that stuff for, a half an hour. I just don't have it in me. Just did not have it in me today. So, ideally, if it were me, I would do everything I'm doing right now with my family, except that we'd also have a huge bonfire, because everything's better when you add in a bonfire. That's just the general way of things. I don't know. I'd like to thank my Patreon patrons, especially Stephanie Graves, Mary Stoll, Lindsay Dosey, Bruce Norville, Courtney, Amber Schmidt, and Isabella Guerra. I probably mispronounced that last one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, thank you guys. And remember, if you support the show on Patreon, even at the $1 level, you get access to these episodes a whole week early. And every penny you put towards this show helps pay for me to keep making this show. So, huzzah. Thanks, you guys, so much for that. If you want to contribute to the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/TRAEGORN. If you can't contribute to Patreon, I understand. Times are tough. You just bought all of those holiday gifts, maybe. But then just please share this episode on social media. Well, maybe share, like, last month's episode or next month. This episode is kind of this episode's a mess. Just share the podcast, though, with your friends. Get them to listen. And remember, you can follow me on social media. I am on Twitter at TRAEGORN, on Tumblr at traegorn.tumblr.com. I am on TikTok, but I've been taking a break, but I'm TRAEGORN on TikTok. And then additionally, you can follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/BSFreeWitchcraft. And remember, we are a part of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network, where we make lots of neat shows, including Stormwood & Associates, the actual play show that I'm the primary GM on, is coming back in January of 2022 with a brand new campaign. We've started recording episodes. I am really, really digging the direction this is going. So it is a modern fantasy role-playing game. The whole first campaign, the whole 135 episodes, is up, but we're about to start a new campaign with new characters, new settings-ish. So you can find that at nerdandtie.com/Stormwood. And when that updates weekly. So it's a lot of fun. And if you want more me, that is a great place to find me all the time. And remember, we have a Discord for this entire podcast network, including this show. And there's channels on it for this show or for our sister podcast, Hex Positive. So you can find that at an invite to our Discord at nerdandtie.com/Discord. And check out the Witchcraft channels. We get a great community there, and just a great general place to talk with people and neat folks who are awesome. Those were words that came out of my mouth. So with that, I'm going to apologize again for how weird this episode was, and I will talk to you guys all again in a month, and I promise I will be better because, again, I have to be. Thank you, Magicians, and I will talk to you all again in the new year.